Definitely some big improvements for the Huawei Mate 30 Pro camera. Let's test it out versus the P30 Pro. We've got absolutely everything: photos, videos, night mode. And there are some big differences between the P30 Pro and the Mate 30 Pro. Not just in quality, but also in the way that the phones are set up. Video on the Mate 30 Pro does seem better overall. I'm going to put it through a lot of different situations. This is just a stabilization test, which, to be fair, on both phones is pretty similar. Color reproduction does change a little bit between the phones. But notice how the Mate 30 Pro's camera angle is wider than the camera angle on the P30 Pro. I'll talk more about that in a second, but let's have a look at the selfie camera on both of them. Check out the background and how it deals with the HDR, because it was so bright out there. But if I go into a dark area, how does it deal with the bright spots and the dark spots using HDR to make the exposure look right? The differences are very minor, but there are some. Stabilization is also very similar between the two. Photos do show a little bit of difference, bearing in mind that the ultra-wide and main sensors between both of these phones are different. Check out the natural color and depth you get from the Mate 30 Pro here with that blurred background. That's because you have a much bigger sensor under that main camera unit. I think it gives a much better image. Taking photos on the ultra-wide is very similar. The Mate 30 Pro does hold up well in zoom, considering it doesn't have that periscope zoom camera that the P30 Pro has. I felt the Mate 30 Pro just missed the mark here though. It was a bit yellow there, whereas the P30 Pro took a better picture. But how about stabilization for video? Just running. I'm running or jogging really, but I think that the Mate 30 Pro does hold up a little bit better than the P30 Pro. It seems to keep a slightly more stable image, but it is using the ultra wide camera to record the video and not the main sensor. I will explain why that is in a second, but let's do a zooming test for video. Both are shooting video on the ultra wide right now. Then we've switched to the main camera lens. So that is 1x zoom. Then slipping into 3x zoom on both of the phones. Very, very similar, but some slight differences in color and exposure and noise. Slipping into 5x zoom on both of them, and again some differences in the color and the exposure and just the look of the image overall. The P30 Pro does go up to 12x zoom in video, whereas the Mate 30 Pro just does 10x zoom. Differences are minor again, but there are some just with the look of how the video comes out. Are those differences shared in photo? So going from the ultra wide camera on both through to the main sensor on both. The next step is 3x zoom on the Mate 30 Pro, but the P30 Pro goes straight into 5x zoom, which this is, and then into 10x zoom on this bike. Again, I think the Mate 30 Pro holds up well. This is 30x zoom on both phones, and then the P30 Pro just goes that little bit further into 50x zoom. See how the Mate 30 Pro on the right just shoots with a wider angle? It shoots with the wide angle lens for video as standard, whereas the P30 Pro uses the main camera as standard for video. The Mate 30 Pro feels completely different to the P30 Pro when you use it. The P30 Pro feels like it's mostly set up for photography. It really feels like a photography camera, especially with the zoom. But when you use the Mate 30 Pro, it really feels like it's primarily set up for videography. When you open the video portion of the camera app, it's already on the wide angle camera, which is dedicated for video. And the way that you use the apps is really quite different between photo and video between them. That's the biggest difference I've found actually using the phones. There's a big difference between the feel of both the Mate 30 Pro and the P30 Pro. Let me show you what I mean by that. We're on photo right now, and we're on the normal camera. You can see the zoom is different between them. The P30 Pro has ultra wide main 5 and 10, whereas on the Mate 30 Pro, it goes ultra wide main 3, and then you have to zoom in from there. When you press record on the phones, it's different. The Mate 30 Pro has this menu bar here, which is always on the ultra wide unless you zoom in. But the P30 Pro starts on 1x zoom, and you can change it just like you do when you're taking photos. Slow-mo on the Mate 30 Pro is insane. It is incredible. Not a feature that should sway you to buy the phone either way, but incredible technology on a smartphone. The main camera lens on the Mate 30 Pro has been made much bigger, and so you get much more natural depth out of the photos that you take with it. A bigger sensor just can take in more information. Selfies are very, very similar though in classic Huawei style, but how about night mode? Can't have a Huawei camera test without the night mode. I just turned off one of the lights and I'm about to turn off the other light right now. So it's getting darker. This is still not night mode though. I've turned night mode on and you can see things get brighter between the two photos. And how do they do in video night mode? This is with full studio lighting, then with one of the lights turned off, and then moving through to both of the lights turned off. It's very difficult to say which one is better. The focal length is different, so if I just blow up the Mate 30 Pro, to be honest, I think they both look pretty blurry. The Mate 30 Pro seems to be a huge improvement all round, a dedicated cine lens and a much bigger sensor under their main camera unit. I also don't think zoom is heavily different from the P30 Pro either. Subscribe for more camera tests, but that's it for now. I'll see you in the next one.